Dart for Trice. That's Chase, and what a start for Cincinnati. And he has the football. Puts a move on. Bijan Robinson, he's going to hit. His first out of no touchdown. Gibbs out of the backfield right away. Oh, yeah, there's no question that he was grabbed. They got ridiculous. They got Gibbs one-on-one with Andrew Van Ginkel in space, and that was it. And this is, again, it's man-to-man. It's one-on-one, and he's underneath. He loses his balance. Block Bowers is one of those guys that has a – and this is –
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Fatboyz Dynasty Podcast presented by the Fantasy Holics, live on the Fantasy Holics X and Fantasy Holics YouTube channel. I'm Bo. This is Brant. As you can see, we've got the stage laid out a little bit different today. We're going to do a 2025 rookie redraft, kind of talk about some changes that we'd make. As you can see on the screen, it's kind of a generic ranking of kind of how these guys went early last year before the season kicked off. We're going to talk about some big changes that we would make. There's going to be some names that we're going to leave off, Brant. But I'm pretty excited to jump into this episode. You know, you and I spent a few minutes before we came on making sure we were copacetic. We had a couple little disagreements and a couple guys in different spots. But it'll be interesting. We got a unanimous ranking here. We're going to go through and present, Brant.
Yeah, absolutely. And this rookie class was a lot better than a lot of people thought it would be. You had some breakout that we're going to talk about, and then you had some that, you know, were drafted in the first round, and everybody thought they were going to be the go-to number one guy, and they didn't score their first touchdown until the playoffs showed up. So we'll be discussing those guys and a few other guys that you're not going to hear from us. We're going to start at the bottom. We're going to start there with our 210 or our number 20th ranked, and we're going to work our way up. This was a pretty crazy class. I'm gonna touch base on one guy that we're not going to talk about a whole lot, and that's Tootin. I was huge on Tootin. I talked about him multiple times leading up to the draft, and then surely the guy that I own in probably 3 leagues, and I was hoping to carry me, Travis Etienne, gets backed up by Bashan Tootin, and that definitely hurt my feelings a little bit because I do think that this guy does have a huge future, and hopefully we'll talk about him in a couple years because I don't think it's anytime soon.
Yeah, one that I think you and I were, you know, way over the top excited about that didn't come to fruition that's on this list that we're not going to talk about when we do our combined rankings for this season is Caleb Johnson. This is a guy that I had the utmost confidence was going to be an absolute smash hit this year. Buried on the depth chart behind Kenneth Gainwell and Jalen Walker. Those guys both finished as top 20 running backs. And it's like, man, the path is right there for Caleb Johnson. And, you know, just with some bad timely fumbles, one that you were a big fan of, obviously, and some just bonehead plays. He just found himself, you know, not in the rotation whatsoever for Pittsburgh, and left a lot of people, myself included, holding the bag when it came to fantasy. So he won't be in the top 20, Brent.
Yeah, and like you alluded to, he had a clear path to get into that role, and that path is still a little murky. You had Warren and John Gainwell both broke out and had great seasons. I think they both finished inside the top 15 or top 20. But I think one of them is a free agent. I haven't broke down the free agent class yet. You and me will get to that in a couple weeks, hopefully.
Yep, absolutely. So without further ado, Brant, you want to start us off talking about the guy that we have at our consensus 210 while I get the stage reorganized.
Yeah, that 210 was a guy that came on late. He started, showing strong, and that's Terrence Ferguson of the Rams. They run a lot of 3 tight end sets. You see a lot of dump offs. You know he's not going to be that guy that's going to hang 40 points a game for you because he's not a Puka Nacua. But Devontae Adams isn't getting any younger, so they're going to need to find a new red zone target, a big body red zone target. And this is who I think is going to be the replacement, because I still think they're going to run 3 tight end sets, but I think he's going to be the guy you see moving outside a little more. Colby Parkinson didn't quite make the good transition fully this year. He was very good for the Rams. He was a lot better for the Rams than he was the Seahawks while we had him. But I do think Ferguson's going to take over that one role there.
Yeah. So speaking of Ferguson, those of you that are friends of the show that pay attention to Brant and I routinely, this is one of the guys that I fell in love with during the combine last season. Love the landing spot, wasn't able to get him in a lot of places, and it was one of those guys you had to be really patient, but when it finally hit, it hit really nicely. And it's something that you feel really, really good about. He had elite speed, great hands, pretty good route tree for a tight end. And this is actually a guy I think you could see as he develops in his career move outside of the inline tight end spots a little bit. But one thing we do know with Sean McVay is the tight end is going to be involved, and I definitely think there's definitely work for Terrence Ferguson moving forward.
Yep, absolutely. So at our 209, we had Pat Bryant there from the Denver Broncos. This is a guy that showed out. Like you said, he came from Illinois, so we got to see quite a bit of him because they broadcast every single Illinois game here. So we did get to see a lot of him. We didn't quite think he was going to climb the depth chart as fast as he did, but he found himself seeing quite a bit of targets, getting a lot of work. And I think the sky's the limit as that team continues to grow. I know missing Bo Nix probably for the first, at least preseason. The first couple of weeks of next year may be a little murky as they start to get the chemistry going back. But I think Pat Bryant's going to find his way climbing up that depth chart.
Yeah, Pat Bryant was a guy last year, Brant, that again, another one that we saw small glimpses of, but he didn't have a ton of volume early. And then the bye week happened, and all of a sudden his snap and target share started to elevate. He had a 7, 8, and a 5 game, 7 target, 8 target, and 5 targets in the 6 weeks after their bye week there. So he was really starting to get more involved, more of, that player that Bo Nix kind of trusted, which is good to see for Pat Bryant. You and I kind of thought it was going to be Evan Ingram that was kind of the secondary option to Cortland Sutton. It definitely very well be moving forward, maybe Pat Bryant, which is why we have him in our top 20 here.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, so at the 208, we settled on a guy who his quarterback was shown on the graphic, but we don't have his quarterback in here. However, we both did have Alec Iamaner on our consensus ranking at the 208. Just another guy that he has a clear role clear path to step into that number 1 wide receiver role on that tight ends team. I don't necessarily think wide receiver is going to be a huge spot that this team targets with all the holes they have. But Cam Ward and Alec Iamaner definitely had some chemistry, definitely broken playability for these two found each other, like that backyard football where we used to see with honestly, it kind of reminded me of this, and I don't want you to reach through the camera and slap me, but a little bit of Tyler Lockett / Doug Baldwin and Russell Wilson chemistry. When a play breaks down, they just know where to go stand and be for where Cam Ward could get them the ball. And I think, that plus the fact that these guys are going to continue to grow together in their career made it too hard to not put Alec Iamaner on the roster or the top 20.
Yeah, and you bringing up that, I watched that a lot firsthand, Doug Baldwin and Tyler Lockett. So it's a great thing whenever that chemistry gets to build. I mean, Tyler Lockett built a career. He was the top 24 wide receiver for most of his career, just playing that type of way. Doug Baldwin, came undrafted, just making that type of career. And if Alec Iamaner makes it that way, you're going to see this guy just creepily in the top 24 every single year. Just how did he get there? Why did he get there? Oh, because he ended up with like 7 catches and, 50 yards and a touchdown just because he was in the right place at the right time every single game. So, yeah, absolutely. This is a guy that's going to continue to grow with that team.
Okay.
All
right.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay, at the 207, the only quarterback we had in our top consensus rankings. I don't think either one of us even mentioned another name. You could have twisted my arm maybe to consider Cam Ward at the 210 spot. But we both have Jackson Dart at the 207. Not necessarily the worst quarterback class. I feel like it certainly is better than the Desmond Ridder, Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett class from a few years ago as far as fantasy output. But when you talk about one guy in this draft class at a quarterback position that could make an impact in your fantasy, it's definitely Jackson Dart. And in a one quarterback league where we're kind of talking about doing this non-super flex, I think the 207 is a really great spot to jump in and grab a guy like Jackson Dart.
Yeah, it's that rushing upside that brings him into that. You didn't see that out of a lot of these quarterbacks. Yes, Sanders can break out of the pocket and get it, but we're still not 100% sure. There's a murky waters there in Cleveland. But yeah, no, Dart's the rushing ability puts him in the top 20 for me. And that's about it. And you're getting that great new head coach there that has unlocked that rushing upside in quarterbacks before with Harbaugh. So I think this is going to be a fun team to watch grow underneath a great coach that they just got.
Yep, I agree. Definitely going to be fun. We really didn't even get to see. I don't think we did at all see Dart with Malik Neighbors. So we just saw him with Wan'Dale Robinson, which was a fantastic connection. But it'd definitely be interesting to see him under center with Malik Neighbors next year. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, they'll all come out of the hospital bed, him, Cam Scannabo, and Malik all together and just hit the field running.
Absolutely.
So at the 206 here, we got Woody Marks. This is a guy that it was a murky backfield. You didn't know what was going to go on with Joe Mixon. And, we still don't know what's going on. The report just came out that we're not even sure what's going on. I know what I'm going to do with him. I'm going to sit him on my IR until somebody tells me if he's going to play again or not. And try to move him for probably like the 410 in our draft, hopefully. But no, this it's my new Kenny Galladay. But no, Woody Marks is a guy that just found himself leading that backfield and catching balls out of the backfield and blocking, and he just found himself in the right spot. He got in a great landing spot for him, and I think this is, this Houston, Texas team's growing. And I think they're realizing that they can't rely solely on CJ Stroud's arm, which I've talked about in the past, that I wasn't 100% believer with CJ Stroud throwing the ball. But I think when this team gets a full balance of rushing and passing, I think this team's going to be dangerous. And I think Woody Marks is going to be a big part of the growth of this team.
Yeah, I think too, the bigger selling point for me is Nick Chubb's age. And the fact that Nick Chubb probably won't be there forever. I do think, again, another plus for owning a running back and the Houston Texans is that DeMarco Ryans is a defensive head coach. Most defensive-minded head coaches like to have a good, strong running game to kill the clock and give your defense a chance to rest on the other side of the ball. And also we have learned one thing from these 2025/6 playoffs is that CJ Stroud likes to give the ball to the other team. Woody Marks doesn't. So kind of feels like that's maybe the avenue you want to take moving forward. So, yeah, I think, if the news broke today that Woody Marks was going to be the lead back next year and Nick Chubb was on the way out, I think there's a stronger chance we see him even, skyrocket up this list a little bit. But for right now, 206 is very comfortable for Woody Marks.
Yeah, absolutely. And then at the 205 was a guy that was a backup for the majority of the year. And then the starter got hurt and he showed what he was capable of. 7th round draft pick, Kyle Monangai there in Chicago. And he's been electric all postseason for the Bears. And he's been great for him. He's a great, backup to Swift, but I don't know how long Swift's going to be in there. And you could see him easily taking over the full workload there. I don't think you're ever going to see a full workload for a back in a Ben Johnson offense, but this guy could easily take over that number 1 spot of that offense, or the 1A as it is.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head here with Woody, with Kyle Monangai. Again, similarly to Woody Marks. If the other back in that backfield doesn't exist, these guys both skyrocket. But again, right now, DeAndre Swift does exist, and DeAndre Swift honestly had a pretty feels like we're kind of staring at that, similar situation to the Detroit Lions, where there was two running backs that worked really well in Ben Johnson's system. I kind of feel like that's where we're at in Chicago. So right now, for me, Kyle Mononguy's a great option. Again, if Swift is gone, Swift misses time for an injury, he skyrockets.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right, so at number 4, ironically enough, neither one of us like the quarterback in this situation, but we have Jaden Higgins, the rookie wide receiver out of Iowa State at the Houston Texans. Definitely another guy that showed some flashes, had some games where there was some decent volume, had some bigger weeks, but for the most part was just a casual. He wasn't the number 1 option, honestly. He was probably the 3rd option in the passing game, behind Nico Collins, and this is going to drive me nuts. I just had the tight end's name on the top of my tongue, and now it's going to disappear. Dalton Schultz, thank you. Hate when that happens. But yeah, Dalton Schultz and Nico Collins were, in my mind, 1A, 1B in that pass catching, world. And then came Jaden Higgins. But I think, again, Jaden Higgins started to develop some steam late. Should look good again going into next season, as long as CJ Stroud can figure out which team he's supposed to throw the ball to.
Right. And like you said, Schultz isn't getting any younger. He's been around the league for quite a while. Nico, I wasn't a firm believer of him going into this year. He had some flashes. I don't think he finished inside the top 10. I could be wrong. But yeah, Higgins had a great year for being, like you said, he slowly had to claw up the depth chart. And then they added Christian Kirk to that team as well. And he had a good showing every once in a while. But I think Higgins is going to solidify himself there as the 1B in that pass catching role. And you're not going to see Tank Dell come back anytime soon. And even if you do, they're not going to put him on the field for more than, 12 snaps a year. So, I mean, between him and Mixon, you're not even sure if you can get 12 snaps out of those two. So I think Higgins is going to fall right into a nice pass catching role. And I don't think this is going to be a guy that's going to finish inside the top 12 any years, but he's definitely going to make a case to be finishing inside the top 24, top 30 every single year.
Yeah, honestly, Brandon, I think he's a flex play probably for most people in fantasy leagues that have him. But again, when you're talking about in a rookie draft, if you're taking a guy at the 204 and you're getting flex play upside, you're happy with that, right? You're not at the 204 expecting to hit a home run. Does that happen for us in some years? Absolutely, it does. But again, I think all things in a vacuum, knowing what we know, getting a flex play out of a guy like Jaden Higgins is pretty exceptional at the 204. Moving on to 203, honestly, this team had a lot of very exciting rookies, and we're going to talk about another one here in just a few minutes. But we have Harold Fannin Jr., the tight end of the Cleveland Browns. This is a guy that it kind of started out like it was going to be Njoku's world, and Fannin was just living in it. And real quickly, those roles reversed. I want to say Fannin was a top 10 tight end this year, Brant. I could be wrong. I'm double-checking that currently. Yeah, Harold Fannin finished his tight end 5 on the season. Mm-hmm. Again, really the big thing that seems to always be catastrophic in Cleveland is the lack of a quarterback. It does sound like there's a small chance Deshaun Watson's the guy next year. Maybe that looks better. I don't know. The Shadur thing, Dylan Gabriel. It was a whole hodgepodge of a mess in Cleveland. But I do think Harold Fannin is a guy that we could be talking about as the best tight end in this class if the quarterback situation gets better.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the guy out of Bowling Green that I absolutely loved. I thought he was a sleeper in drafts. I don't think I was able to get him in any of our drafts. But yeah, no, this guy, he has the same type of skill set as Njoku. And I think the age showed as the year went on that he's just a little fresher than Njoku is. He's a great, route runner. He finds himself in the right place in the end zone quite a bit. And I think the sky's just, it's just going to keep going up for Harold Fannin. And he's such a big guy that he's just a safety valve for any quarterback that steps on the field for the Cleveland Browns. I mean, we've seen those jerseys that everyone posts with the 900 names on it. So
yes,
it could be anybody starting at quarterback for that team.
And again, what we always say on the Fatboyz Brand is when it's a quarterback who's not proven, not great, they're going to look at their tight end. They're going to look at their running back. That bodes well for Harold Fannin moving forward.
Yep. So right now we're at the 202 here. We both had Cam Scatterbo. This guy just runs hard. He'll run through a brick wall, and he's going to keep on running. And now getting John Harbaugh there, we saw how much he likes to give the ball to a bruiser back like that. Hopefully he can teach him how to run a little nicer so he doesn't hurt himself as much. But Cam Scatterbo is going to be the workhorse there. We both talked about it preseason, how we thought that it was a good spot, but we didn't think he'd take over right away. Tracy was there. But I think adding John Harbaugh, I think that this is Cam Scatterbo's world now in that backfield because of the way that he likes to run. And like I said, hopefully this coach can help him out running a little nicer so he doesn't get as injured so quickly and so many concussions or have to go to the blue tent 100 times a game.
Yeah, I think honestly, you started off with the best thing about Cam Scatterbo, which is the worst thing about Cam Scatterbo. If he wasn't as much of a savage as he is running the ball, I think there's a chance he could be higher. I just don't think the shelf life is going to be super long on him. He's going to be very, very fun to own, but it's going to be like one of those deals where he's a Ferrari and you ride him at 100 miles an hour every time you're in the car, and it just doesn't last long. It's going to be really, 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 really fun while it does. But the minute it craps out, the resale value's gone. Just not going to be a whole lot left. So, yeah, for me right now, unless he figures out how to run less viciously, which I don't think is a thing for him, I just don't see the shelf life being long enough to keep him, in forever. So.
Yeah, this is a 1 or 2 year rental. It's one of those cars you go and you rent and then, the new model's out, time to trade him. I don't see the shelf life being great. You may get 1 or 2 years out of him, and then you may have to start shipping him. And I have a feeling that in our trade episodes, he's going to be a name that we bring up quite a bit over the next 2 years.
Yeah, I agree with you, Brant.
So at the 201, we had another running back there and RJ Harvey in Denver. It did take a unfortunate another injury to J.K. Dobbins for him to fully take over that backfield, and he's looked great doing it. He's caught the ball, he's ran the ball. I think that he's going to be Tyler came on and said Cam Scatterbo is called a lease, is what we call that. But yeah, no, I think Harvey's a guy that's going to take over that backfield and be the full workhorse. We know that Dobbins, even if he does stay there, he's not going to be a guy that's going to give you 17 games. So RJ Harvey is a guy that I think is going to be the 1A in that backfield and see a lot of touches in a Sean Payton offense.
Yeah, I don't even view him as a 1A. Honestly, I know there was a lot of years that, Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram coexisted for Sean Payton, and that was kind of the way of the world for Sean Payton. I think RJ Harvey is more today's NFL. I think he's going to be an 75 to 80% of the touches out of the backfield or snap percentage in Denver. I think they bring J.K. Dobbins back on a cheap deal, but I think he moves to a more, change of pace back. I think RJ Harvey's definitely earned his role, and I'm definitely excited about him moving forward. Again, I think when you talk about RJ Harvey, it's just too hard to move him in front of any of these other 10 names that we're about to talk about. Otherwise, he'd be a first-round pick, obviously. But right now, I just can't quite get him in front of the others, Bram.
Yep.
So starting off the 210, yes, he's injured. Yes, the injury was bad. Yes, he doesn't play full-time offense. We do have Travis Hunter. Again, this is a guy that last year was probably a top 5 pick in your rookie startups. Obviously, the fall off is because Jacoby Myers signed a 3-year extension. Brian Thomas is still there. But here's the thing. Trevor Lawrence had like a career year. He had a resurgence, and that was without his number 1 first-round pick. That team goes and makes a big run under Liam Cohen. That offense looks electric. Trevor Lawrence looks like he's got some confidence. He's throwing catchable balls this year. It was almost like a thing where we were all ready to write Trevor Lawrence off in the fantasy community. I believe he was a top 12 tight end, or top 12 tight end. He's a top 12 quarterback on the season. And Travis Hunter next year, as long as he can stay healthy, is just going to continue to have great games on that. There was a stretch there before the injury where Travis Hunter was startable in fantasy in that rookie season, mainly because Brian Thomas wasn't there, and that injury happened. Brian Thomas wasn't contributing, so they go out and make that trade for Jacoby. But I still think there's going to be room in the pecking order for Travis Hunter to come out and still be electric.
Yeah, and I think the extension of Jacoby was in order to get Travis to play both sides of the ball a little bit more, as well as these rumors are starting to surface that he's going to still be a two-way player. But that one game right before he went out for injury, he had 14 targets, 8 catches, 101 yards. That was the breakout game. That was where Trevor Lawrence is like, okay, I get this guy the ball in the middle of the field and he's going to make people miss. And, averaging, yards per catch was 12 yards. And I think they unlocked and saw what he is capable of. And when he comes back, I think Travis Hunter is going to be electric. I think he's going to move over Jacoby Myers in that pecking order. And if Brian Thomas doesn't quite figure it all out, you could see Travis Hunter being the number one guy there and easily there in Jacksonville. They did make a huge play to go get him. So I do think Travis Hunter is going to make a huge impact when he does return from injury and for years to come.
The one last thing I'll add on Travis Hunter before we move on is the reason I've still got him in the first round is very similar to how he was in the top 3 for me last year. He doesn't have to play over 50% of the offensive snaps to be fantasy relevant. This guy is one of those guys that you get the ball in his hands, he's going to make things happen. They're going to find a way to get him involved. So I don't really care how often he's on the field. Doesn't bother me from a fantasy standpoint. My expectations may be lower based on what it is, but I think you could see this guy outperform a Jameson Williams with 50% of the snaps. So I'm very comfortable with Travis Hunter inside our top 10. Moving on to the 109, to probably my favorite player in this year's draft, who definitely waited till the second half of the season to emerge, is Luther Burden of the Chicago Bears. Obviously, you take out the Atlanta Falcons fandom for a moment and just step into this. I'm a Mizzou Tigers fan. Luther Burden's on TV every week in our area where we live with the Chicago Bears. It's just kind of fun to watch. Luther Burden definitely came on late down the stretch. Caleb Williams and him definitely got a good little connection going there. And the slot wide receiver and Ben Johnson's offenses are always very exciting. And I can't wait to see what that looks like next year with the rumors that DJ Moore's out the door, potentially coming to fruition.
This is the guy that was drafted by Ben Johnson. The Rome wasn't, DJ Moore wasn't brought in by him. Loveland and Burden were drafted by Ben Johnson for this offense. I think that Burden is going to step in the Amon-Ra St. Brown role of this, as we saw late in the season. He was the go-to guy on third downs. If you watch some of the playoffs, he was the first look on a lot of them. I know Rome was out, but even when Rome came back those last 2 games, Luther Burden was on the field more and was seeing more targets than Rome Odunze. This is the guy in this offense, I believe. And I easily could have moved him up a little bit higher. I know I had him lower than you. It was just that what if thing. What if DJ Moore stays? What if they still have all these targets? Caleb Williams is going to get better. Yes, I know he's one of the most inaccurate quarterbacks this year, but he's going to get better, and he has shown it throughout the season as he has gotten better.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
The 108, we have Emeka Egbuka. This was a guy that came on strong. I made a trade for him in our draft, and everyone's like, oh, this is an even trade pretty much. And then he kind of fell off. This is an offense that is revolved around passing as long as Baker Mayfield's under center. And I think Egbuka is eventually going to be moved into that second role over, Godwin and Evans. Over one of them. I think he'll be the number 2 in that offense in a pass-first offense, and Egbuka is going to thrive. He did it at Ohio State with, everybody else around, and he's going to find a way to do it there in Tampa Bay as well.
Yeah, my big thing on Emeka Egbuka is, like you alluded to, Brant, the start was insane. Week 1, watching him catch 2 touchdown passes on my Atlanta Falcons sucked. It was like I thought we were crowning the next Justin Jefferson. Welcome to the league, Emeka Egbuka. After week 5, he had 1 touchdown all season. That's your regression right there. Honestly, the numbers are still really great with him. 127 targets. Problem was he only caught 63 of those passes. So I still think there's definitely a way for him to become even more fantasy relevant. Finished as a top 23 wide receiver last year, or a top 24 wide receiver. Excuse me. He was like number 23, I believe. I just set my phone down, but it's a thing that I think you're going to have to wait 2 or 3 years on before he's ever, a top 10-ish wide receiver, because Mike Evans still does exist in that offense. Chris Godwin still does exist in that offense. Bucky Irving still does exist in that offense. I will say this with a breed of caution. Zach Robinson just signed there today as their offensive coordinator, the former offensive coordinator of the Atlanta Falcons. Run first offense, a lot of pistol, not great for the NFL. It'll be interesting to see how that looks in Tampa Bay and if he's willing to adapt to that at all. But I do, because of all those things, that is why Egbuka is where he is, and where we're going to talk about another wide receiver here in a little while.
Okay, absolutely. Let's see where we at. 107. We have Tyler Warren. This is a guy that prior to his, he went 14 weeks, 13 weeks with counting the bye with his quarterback. He only had 2 of them outside of the top 12, 3 of them, sorry, outside of the top 12 as tight ends. This is a guy that with Daniel Jones, he looked great. He found the end zone, everything else. And then you threw him out there with Phillip Rivers and some other, and you saw the decline of that, of the tight end position there in Indy. I think this guy is going to be a staple of that offense for years to come. And as long as they have a competent quarterback and not trying to roll out a 67-year-old with 10 kids, I think he'll be just fine.
Hey, we don't know that he hasn't had an 11 since then. But yeah, I listen, I agree. Tyler Warren with Daniel Jones was must-watch football. We talked about it again prior to the show starting. There in our home league, shortly after our draft, there was a massive trade involving Tyler Warren that for the first 10 weeks of the season, I would have said was completely lopsided, a horrific trade. It definitely evened out a little bit later down the stretch, especially with where things panned out. But man, Tyler Warren was so good through those first 10 weeks of the season or whatever with Daniel Jones. But then it's like you alluded to, Phillip Rivers came in there and it was kind of just like Alec Pierce on a 25-yard touchdown or nothing. And so that was kind of bad for all things fantasy and Andy with Phillip Rivers. But I do think, Daniel Jones is going to be there again next year. I think even with the injury, they're going to pay him. They're going to re-sign him. He's going to be their guy moving forward. And honestly, I think that's going to be great for Tyler Warren long-term.
Okay, absolutely.
All right, moving into the 106, we both agreed and had Trevion Henderson here. Trevion Henderson, again, is one of those guys kind of similar to like that Devon A-Chain. Doesn't have to have 15 carries a game to establish himself. This is a guy that in his offense catches passes from Drake May, definitely gets some run under center as well, or from, in the backfield with rushes as well. Mike Vrabel definitely likes this kid. Obviously, he drafted him. Again, very simply put, and I think I'm going to hit on the nail for you as well. Ramondre Stevenson exists. That's where Henderson isn't higher than what he is. Ramondre Stevenson had, I believe, a career year for Ramondre Stevenson this year when we were all ready to write him off. So, Ramondre Stevenson takes a ride into the sunset, goes someplace else. Henderson goes way higher, but for right now, 106 is a really good landing spot for Trevion Henderson.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with that one. I'm not even going to touch on it too much more. It's Ramondre Stevenson is the only reason that he is this low on our rankings, and that's where I'm going to leave that.
Okay. All right. At number 5, we have Quinshon Judkins of the Cleveland Browns. This is a guy that came in and he's a grinder. Got a lot of, each week his snap percentage went higher and higher. His touches went higher and higher. Unfortunately, down the playoff stretch, we did see him have his nasty leg injury. So I think that definitely does affect where he's ranked now. But Judkins definitely a top 5 guy at this point.
Yeah, Judkins, he came in, he missed 3 games, and he came in and still finished as RB 26. And he saw 230 touches. He catches the ball. He's a grinder. He's going to grind out yards, and that's kind of what the Cleveland needs to do whenever they're not sure who the quarterback's going to be. So I like Judkins moving forward, and I was anti-Judkins going into the draft. I should have drafted him, and maybe I wouldn't have made the trade for Tyler Warren or to get rid of Tyler Warren. Oh, and then so at the next one, that was I just flipped my page. At the 104, we have Hampton. Chargers offense, run first, always has been a hardball thing. So I think Hampton's got a great year moving forward. I know we saw him get banged up quite a bit this year on and off. But I think moving forward, Hampton's going to be the guy there in Los Angeles.
Real quick, I want to address this from Tyler. Tyler on YouTube comes out of saying that broken leg surely drops Judd for me going forward. Yeah, I think it is what kept him from being higher for us. I think if the leg is healthy, you could make an argument between him and Hampton, who we have at the 104. Definitely not going much higher than that. But again, a broken leg isn't going to ruin the rest of his career, I don't expect. So for Brant and I, we talked about it, when we were putting our consensus rankings together. We're not just ranking these guys for next year. We're trying to rank them and project them for the rest of their careers. And that's why we still have Judkins at our 105, just for the sake of explaining that.
Okay.
My quick 2 cents on Omari Hampton before we move on. Mike McDaniel is now the offensive coordinator in Los Angeles. I think you're going to see some of that Devon A-Chain work for Hampton moving forward. I think I'm very excited about Hampton long term. If that offensive line gets healthy in Los Angeles next year, it could be a really, really good spot.
And then that was the 4. So at the 3, we have Colston Loveland, a guy that came on late in the year. It showed that he is Caleb Williams' go-to guy. He moves all over the formation. He's George Kittle-esque. He gets the ball and he gets those yards after catch. And he still finished as tight end 12, missing 1 game. I think Loveland's going to be one of the most go-to targets there in Chicago.
Yeah, I think when you discuss and talk about the tight end position and what your dream tight end kind of looks like, it feels an awful lot like we're starting to see that towards the end of that with Colston Loveland. Brant and I both have lives going on around us on our stream tonight. That's not normally how it is, but I mean, honestly, Caleb Williams hyper targeted him. I want to say in that playoff game, which I now need to go look just because I don't want to feel silly, but I want to say he had like 14 targets in the game that they were eliminated in. 15 targets. 15 targets against Green Bay. Next week, he had 10 targets against Los Angeles. So hyper targeted down the stretch from Colston Loveland. So, Kevin, I do see you got a question up here real quick. We are going to discuss this. I'm going to let Brant have his moment with this here in just a few minutes. We're going to get through the rest of this, and we're going to talk about the championship weekend real quick, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah. 1 and 2 are pretty easy. We'll go with the number 2. That's Ted McMillan. He showed off that he's the one in that offense as it slowly grew throughout the year. They made the playoffs. Bryce Young took steps forward. The offense took steps forward. And Ted McMillan is just going to get better as he moves on, and he's going to be hyper targeted. He's the one in that offense. He was drafted. He made some catches throughout the year that showed why they drafted him to be their number 1 guy. So Ted McMillan's my number 2, or our number 2.
Yeah. For me, this one's really simple. The debate between him and Egbuka, or Luther Burden, if you will. There's no, Mike Evans. There's no Chris Godwin. The one thing that I will say that holds Tet back a little bit is Bryce Young. We've seen Bryce Young be awesome, anytime he plays the Atlanta Falcons, and then kind of just average or below average against everybody else. Did have a great game wild card weekend against the Los Angeles Rams. But I do think we need to see Bryce Young take a step forward, or there'll be a new quarterback in town next year. And I think either way that works out really well for Teteroa McMillan. So, I'm in agreement there on 2. And then at 1, didn't change from last year, Brandon. It's Ashton Genty. You would expect there to be a different quarterback in town. Obviously, all roads point to Mendoza. I think there's going to be some money spent on the offensive line. Obviously, we still don't know who the coach is going to be next year walking in the door. But Genty, I feel like, is one of those generational talents that I don't really care about who's coaching him. Very similarly to the way I'm not going to care about Kevin Stefanski now being in charge of Bijan Robinson. Bijan's still the number 1 in my mind. Obviously, we'll probably talk about that Genty fit with the new head coach when that comes out. But we saw enough from Genty and saw enough flashes, and the future's bright enough. We couldn't take him out of the 1 spot.
Yeah, 300 total touches this year, finishing as RB11. He showed behind a piss-poor offensive line, he showed how good he can be, even getting hit before he even gets to the line. I think Genty is definitely consensus number 1 still.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so real quick recap. Second round starts at the 201. RJ Harvey, Cam Scatabo, Harold Fannin Jr., Jaden Higgins, Kyle Monongai, Woody Marks, Jackson Dart, Alec Iamaner, Pat Bryant, Terrence Ferguson to round out the second round. First round, Brant, you want to hit everybody with a recap of that first round?
Yeah, 101 was Genty, 2 was Tet, Loveland, Hampton, Judkins, Henderson, Warren, Abuka, Burden, and Travis Hunter to round out that first round.
It'd be interesting if we could do a year 3 redraft. I imagine we won't have that much time on our hands to do that, but that's where we see things, as things sit now. Obviously, I don't want to take any more time away from this. I already dangled the carrot in front of your face, or in our world, like a Long John donut in front of your head here. So I'll let you chomp on it. We'll start with the NFC Championship game. Your Seattle Seahawks playing host to division rivals, the Los Angeles Rams. You guys split 1-1 each this year. What are your thoughts?
This game is always electric. Over the last 2 years, it's been 2-point difference and 1 yard difference total. This year, it's 1.1 yard. It's crazy. The game is. I really wish the game could be played tomorrow so I could stop hearing about it, because all year this year it was the Seahawks are no good. They're just getting lucky. And now all of a sudden everybody's stop underrating us. And they're saying that we're going to beat the Rams. I'm nervous. It's going to be a great game. The winner of that game wins the Super Bowl. I'm putting it right now. The winner of that game is the Super Bowl champ. I don't think there's enough defense on the AFC side to handle what either team brings to the table. Defense normally wins in the playoffs. That's what history shows. So I do think that Seattle's going to win. I'm never going to tell you they're not going to win, even when we're the worst team in the NFL going to the playoffs at 7-9. We'll see. It's making me nervous. I thought I was going to get kicked out of my house on the opening kickoff this past week, so I'm kind of hoping maybe we can turn it up again and I can get yelled at again and texted by my neighbor after the first play of the game.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think when you talk about the NFC this late in the year, I think you talk about defenses winning games. I won't say there's no defense on the other side, because the Patriots and the Broncos both have damn good defenses. I just said there's not enough defense. Well, we'll talk about that just in a few weeks, I imagine. But I will say this. I think if Matthew Stafford is MVP, I think they have more firepower offensively than the Seahawks do. If the Seahawks defense shows up, Matthew Stafford's not going to be MVP Stafford, and I think the Seahawks win that game comfortably. It's just going to depend on what version of Matthew Stafford we see in my mind. So I think it's a Seahawks game to lose is kind of the way I feel about it. It depends on how they contain Stafford.
The way I see this game output is if the Rams come out and hang points quick and fast on us, the Rams will win that game. If we commit an early turnover and get the momentum going, it's Seattle's game all the way. So that first quarter is going to be definitely huge to see.
All right, on the AFC side, we have the Drake May, also a front runner for the MVP, Patriots, traveling to Denver to play the Jarrett Stidham Denver Broncos. Definitely unfortunate to see Bo Nix break his ankle. Thoughts on that game?
Don't sleep on Stidham. I think the game's going to be a little bit closer. I think it's going to be a good game. I think Denver does have enough defense to hold them in the game and keep it close. I think New England eventually pulls it out late in the game. But yeah, I'm not sleeping on Stidham. I do think that the game's going to stay close.
Yeah, Denver's defense, in my mind, is the second best defense left in the playoffs, obviously behind your Seattle Seahawks. I think that defense is going to be good enough to keep them in the game. It's just going to be, can Jarrett Stidham do enough to not necessarily win them the game, but not cost them the game? Again, I think very similar.
Kind of like Sam Darnold.
Yes, exactly. I think, although Sam Darnold is a much better quarterback than Jarrett Stidham, so I think you're looking at a spot where if Drake May comes out and plays like Drake May has this year, I think the Patriots ultimately do get the win. I will say this, though. This is the last thing I want to say, and then I can be done for this episode. I don't think either AFC defense is as good as the Seahawks, but I think both of their defenses are much better than the Rams, for what that's worth.
Kevin, I think Seattle is better than Houston. I don't think Denver is, but I do think Denver is the second best defense left in the playoff. Yes.
No, it's not even close. Houston's the best defense in football. I know statistically it got close towards the end of the season because Houston gave up a lot of points to the Raiders and then week 18. But I think when you talk about getting after the pass or the quarterback, I think Houston had the most sacks in the NFL this year. They were up there with turnovers, defensive touchdowns. I think that's the best defensive unit in football. They were hampered by a terrible offense in Houston. I'm not taking anything away from the Seahawks. They've been historical as well this year, but I'm talking if I'm building a team around one defense, I'm still going to take the Houston Texans at this point.
Okay. All right. Should be two good games this weekend. It's going to be fun. No bias at all. No bias at all. Should be a fun weekend in the conference championships. Hopefully we'll get back to our Wednesday show and a little quieter in our backgrounds. But I think that wraps it up for today. And as
one more second. Hey, start paying attention. If you haven't already done so, go follow the Fantasy Holics TikTok page. Brant and I, as well as the guys on the Blood, Sweat, and Tears podcast, are going to start putting out some more videos, some TikToks, some Reels, some YouTube Shorts, just to kind of get some of that information out and kind of a way that's evolving. Everybody kind of goes for videos for the fantasy stuff nowadays. So we're going to give it a try, see how that goes. So start looking out for that. Make sure you're following the TikTok so you don't miss any of it.
Yep. Absolutely. Thanks for joining us tonight. And as always, stay hungry.
Stay fat, my friends.